take a look at energy matters, and on the back of the electricity minister's briefing on the state of the country's national grid, we take a look at some of the salient points that came out. We're joined by energy analyst Chris Yelland. Chris, thank you very much for your time this morning. I mean, maybe let's start by assessing this appointment viewing every Sunday at 10 a.m. A lot was said about how we need to get a handle on this situation. So what has been your assessment in terms of the intervention of the electricity minister?
Well, firstly, I want to say I'm very heartened by the welcome communications from the Minister of Electricity. I mean, it's really unusual to see this sort of thing happening even on a Sunday. And it indicates, I think, an increased sense of urgency and an increased sense of accountability and focus that the new Minister of Electricity is bringing to the issue. And it is starting to bear fruit. It's still early days, but certainly there are indeed improvements, and I'm sure there will be hurdles along the way still. But I think this level of openness and transparency and engaging with the public is really to be welcomed, and today was a further example of this.
Let's speak about the considerable improvement on generation capacity, with capacity available being normalized at an upward of 29 megawatts. 29,000 megawatts, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, indeed. Look, the majority of the focus of today's media briefing this morning, which started at 10 o'clock, was actually on the performance or the efforts to improve the performance of Eskom's existing power stations. And this was quite wide-ranging, focusing primarily on the coal-fired power stations, but also touching on the Koeberg nuclear power station. So the minister went through a whole range of interventions that are being applied, and he divided, Eskom's coal-fired generators into two kind of categories. The category one is where they're performing with an availability of above 60%, and there are about 5 or 6 such power stations that are performing reasonably well, 1 or 2 of them performing very well. And then there is a group of power stations that are generating well below 60%, some as low as 12%, and those are very poorly performing power stations. Obviously, they're working to maintain the good performance of the good performing power stations and improve the performance of those that are not. Of course, what was not dealt with today in any shape really was efforts to add new generation capacity to the grid. And, well, one cannot cover everything in an hour's media briefing. And the focus of today's briefing was actually on, the efforts in respect of the existing fleet. But the minister promised that there would be a focus in future on the new generation capacity that needs to be brought to bear. And I think the important thing to note here is that you have to do these things simultaneously. It's impossible to improve the performance of the existing fleet because there is no generation reserve margin. So you cannot do the necessary maintenance without shutting down generators and having more load shedding. So at the same time as you're trying to improve the performance of the Eskom fleet, you need to bring on new generation capacity that performs well, that increases the average energy availability factor whilst you remove the worst of the power stations. And in this way, you can slowly, step by step, improve the average energy availability factor by removing those power stations that are performing badly and adding new power stations that are performing well with high energy availability factor. So we look forward also to similar efforts, perhaps in weeks to come, on what what the minister and what the electricity supply industry is doing to bring new generation capacity to the grid.
And then distribution unbundling. There was a question from the floor about that, and Rudy was very quick to jump up to say, listen, we are not selling anything. We're not selling Eskom. This is to simply allow for great private participation, and it will remain state-owned. What has been your interpretation of what's going on there?
So, firstly, to say that it was touched on, the whole distribution announcement that was made last week by the Minister of Public Enterprise, Mr. Pravin Gordhan. There has been, of course, some political contestation of these ideas, but these are not actually new ideas. They've been on the cards for many years. In fact, dating back to 1998, the government white paper on energy policy, which talked to the restructuring of the distribution industry. You may remember the company EDI Holdings was established in the 2000s. To restructure the electricity distribution industry. It was kind of abandoned, and the whole process has been reopened because our current electricity distribution industry is not functioning properly. A large number of municipalities are in financial distress. They are poorly managed. They cannot pay Eskom. It's causing problems at Eskom with their financial status. And it's got a high level of politicization, poor service delivery, and we feel this not only in electricity but in other sectors. For example, water is just one such, and also sanitation, sewerage and sanitation. So municipalities and the whole electricity distribution industry need to be reformed, and the processes are underway. They are very slow. But some progress is being made, and there will no doubt be political contestation, particularly as we move towards the elections next year. And there are a lot of ideological battles that carry on, but I believe we need to focus on delivering services. And if we just sit around arguing about ideology, we are failing the citizens of South Africa. We need to deliver services that work. And that is what the restructuring of electricity distribution is ultimately all about.
Chris Yelland is an energy analyst. Thank you very much for your time.